I think you're muted. Hello, and thank you for attending this evening. My name is Nell Clausen, and I am the Voter Services Chair of the local league of the League of Women Voters, US, a national nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We welcome both men and women. I want to underscore the primary tenet of our organization, nonpartisanship. In the 102 years since we were established, we have never endorsed or opposed a candidate or political party at any level of government. We are ardent about positions, not people. It's sometimes confusing, however, because after a formal study process, we will and have taken positions on issues. We are truly grateful and impressed by those of you who are participating in tonight's forum, to the candidates for your willingness and courage to run for the office, to the audience for your involvement in the democratic process, and to the local league members who expend a great deal of time and energy to make these forums fair and informative. I hope you enjoyed the slideshow with important information about the league. If you missed it, please note it will run again at the end of the forum for about 5 minutes. With that, I'd like to introduce Norma Turner, the moderator this evening. Norma has moderated many forums for the league, and we appreciate her volunteering to do this forum for us this evening. Norma?
Thank you, Nell. And a special thanks to Rebecca Miller, because she created this interesting PowerPoint that you just saw. And a special welcome to our two candidates, and thank you both for being willing to run. And for all of you that are tuning in, we're really sorry, we're still Zooming. We would love to have in person, but with COVID, that's not possible. But we are hopeful in the future we'll return to in-person forums. So tonight we have two candidates here for Clallam County Sheriff, and the league sent out a press release and encouraged citizens to send us questions, because we will not be taking questions from the audience that's tuning in, but rather from those that sent them in ahead of time. And as I was telling the two candidates earlier, this is a very popular race. We ended up with 19 questions to ask, and we didn't have any duplicates. So we will be here until about 6:45 in order to get through all the questions. So I have the pleasure now of introducing Bonnie Bless Banish, who will explain how the timing works. Bonnie?
Thanks, Norma. Hello, my name is Bonnie, and I'm your timer for tonight's forum. Here's a little demonstration of how the timing will work. I'll be alternating between the timer title screen and a countdown video. After the moderator asks a question, each candidate will have the same amount of time to respond. Once a candidate begins speaking, I'll start the countdown timer. The timer begins with a purple background, and when there are 15 seconds remaining, the background turns yellow. When the time is up, the background is red and the word stop appears. Candidates can feel free to finish the sentence they're on, but then they need to stop. Thank you for staying within the time limits.
Thanks, Bonnie. You're very efficient. Okay, and so now I'd like to have the pleasure of introducing our two candidates. We have Brian King and Marc Titterness. And tonight we will start, they will have 2 rounds of questions that are from the league. And the first one, and they will be speaking in the same order they're listing on the ballot. And at the end, we'll have summary comments and we'll reverse that order. So the first question is, please explain to us your education, experience, and qualifications for the office, and if you have time, why you chose to run for this office. So the first one on the ballot is Brian King. So Brian, you're first. You have a 1 minute.
Thank you, Norma. Born and raised in Clallam County and having served our community for 27 years as a law enforcement officer, my passion is serving our community to ensure our families and our friends are safe now and for future generations. Preserving our safety and our quality of life has become my life's purpose. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office for 22 years and have risen through the ranks of this department, a fine organization. I've risen to the ranks of Chief Criminal Deputy and have served in this position for the past 7 years. I am an FBI National Academy graduate, graduate of the Northwest Law Enforcement Command College, and graduate of the High Performance Leadership Development Academy. I'm a proud graduate of Peninsula College and having attended Washington State University and the University of Virginia. I hope I've earned your vote and your confidence on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark, you're next. The same explanation of Sheriff as your education, your experience, and qualifications for the office. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Marc Titterness. I have been part of the community here on the Olympic Peninsula for the past 37 years, since I was about 9 years old. This was my second home growing up, and as such, the peninsula is it's dear to me. It's dear to my heart. It's the place that I always dreamed of as a child, where I wanted to live. So when I grew up and I started raising my children, my wife and I decided to move our children here to this community where they could grow in a safe small town environment. Now, my experience includes 10 years of business management experience and also being a small business owner before I switched career paths and entered into criminal justice. I've worked at state level corrections, county corrections. In the last 6 years, I was on patrol here in Clallam County, working for the Clallam County Sheriff's Office. During that time, I have watched as our public safety has eroded, and I determined that if I was going to make a change, I was going to have to be the change needed in this community, and that's why I'm running for sheriff.
Thank you. So the second round is a moral war complex. So you get 2 minutes, and it's to explain what is the top issue that you believe is now confronting the sheriff's office, and specifically, how do you plan to deal with it? And if you have time, to share with us your primary goal that you hope to accomplish in the first year in office. So we'll go with the same order, and it will be Brian first, and you have 2 minutes.
Tackling behavioral health is one of our biggest challenges here in Clallam County right now. We are modeling co-response models for law enforcement to respond with behavioral health professionals in the field. We partner with Rediscovery. We are extremely taxed right now with the behavioral health issues that exist in our community right now. That is one of our biggest challenges. It takes a lot of our time, and it takes a lot of our efforts in the jail to be able to house and treat folks that are in crisis. This is one of our biggest challenges. This is a challenge I am willing to take head on as sheriff, and looking at ways that we can become efficient and improve how we respond to the mental health, behavioral health crisis in the jail and in our community. I have 3 primary goals as sheriff. One is to build a seismically tolerant emergency operations center, and for us to be able to aid in the recovery of a Cascadia type event. We're seeing the need for emergency operations center in our community every single day. With some of the weather events that we have an aging population. There is a need to be able to get crucial medical supplies and ensure that there's power for oxygen to our elderly population. And we see that every day in our community. Expanding the footprint of our jail to be able to actually deliver the medical and behavioral health needs of our inmate population, which has become so much more complex, is a critical issue that we need to face, and I will take on as sheriff. And certainly maintaining our high performance standards, maintaining our accreditation standards, everything that we've accomplished as a law enforcement, a professional service-oriented law enforcement agency is my goal. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark, do you want me to repeat where the question is? Mark, do you want me to repeat what you're responding to this round?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. So what is the top issue confronting the sheriff's office, and how do you plan to deal with it? Also, what is your primary goal that you hope to accomplish your first year in office? And this is a 2-minute question.
Thank you, Norma. So top priority facing the sheriff's office right now is without a doubt our staffing. Currently, we're down a number of positions on patrol. We're down so low in the jail right now that they're paying officers double time and a half just to volunteer to work overtime to cover those positions and backfill those. We've got recruitment and retention bonuses to the tune of $600,000 is what Brian quoted last week to try to encourage and entice people to come to work for us and to also try to entice them to continue working for us. The issue with that recruitment retention bonus, and it was in the paper briefly, the deputies are not leaving because of money. They're not leaving for more money to go to work for other agencies. They're leaving because of work conditions, and those work conditions are caused due to the lack of staffing. The work conditions meaning they're doing 2 to 3 times the volume of work of other agencies and our neighboring agencies. So they can go to work next door. They can earn more money, do less work, have backup in a safer environment. And until the administration recognizes those issues and does something to change those conditions, we're going to continue bleeding officers to those other agencies. As far as my other priorities for my first term running for sheriff, the jail, again, needs to be open. And part of opening that jail means that we have to have staffing. Now, they're talking about how that's yesterday's news, but it's not yesterday's news. I just had a gentleman who was refused booking just last week, had a warrant out of Clallam County. Clallam County wouldn't confirm on it because, of course, he's out of county, so he's somebody else's problem. These issues are going to keep being a problem until we change the priorities of the agency. And finally, the last issue that I want to tackle my first term is going to be bringing our department up to speed with technology. 2022, we need body cameras to build trust and to support the community and support the officers. And all the officers also want to have that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to move into the questions that were submitted by the community, and they'll be in 3 categories. First, there's just a general election issue, and then we'll have about 10 questions on community issues and 10 questions on management issues. So these answers will be 90 seconds, and we are going to rotate every other question. So Mark, we're going to start, you're going to be first with the first question, and it's a general election question. And that is a universal question for this election season is, do you believe there's widespread fraud in the election system, and will you accept the results of your election?
Yeah, I don't believe there's widespread fraud in the election system, and I have a lot of faith in our election system here in Washington State. We've been using the mail-in system for some time. Is any system perfect? Absolutely not, but even in the computerized systems that are available out there, there have been issues with the programming. And anyway, I have absolute confidence in the Clallam County election process and the people running it. And I absolutely believe in our system here in this community. Norma, thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, the same question. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Norma.
Okay. And then you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. No, I absolutely agree with Mark. I don't see any widespread voter fraud occurring here in Clallam County or anywhere across the state. I firmly believe, and I am a strong believer in our election process. As a chief criminal deputy, I receive the referrals from our canvassing board here in Clallam County and look at any of those anomalies that do exist with some of our ballots. I assign those to our deputies, our detectives, and our sergeants to investigate. And what we do find is, we receive on average, 20 to 30 referrals, but they're just minor violations. That they are, can simply be a husband and wife, and a wife signing a husband's ballot, and the board goes back and our officials go back and they look and they see that, hey, this was just an oversight. So no, those referrals that come to us, they're very, very minor in nature, and I support our elections process and believe that it is great.
Thank you. I want you to know you guys are doing great staying within the time limits. Okay, now on to community concerns. And so Brian, you are first this time, and all these questions from now on will be 90 seconds for the answer time. So the question is, please share some specific ideas on how the Sheriff's Department can work with the community and treatment organizations to address people who commit low-level drug-related crimes. So Brian, you're first on this question.
Well, I think that comes into, we've already established some of these programs, and whether that program is through rediscovery, which is normally where we focus our time and efforts in getting our folks that are out on the streets, that are experiencing homelessness. Most of, a vast majority of the homeless folks on our streets have a behavioral health issue, and that's oftentimes part of they have drug substance use disorders. And what we're doing is we're partnering well, and we're getting folks to the treatment that is necessary. Part of our problem, though, is incentivizing folks, incentivizing that treatment. And what the problem that we do really face right now is these drugs are extremely powerful. Opiates are extremely powerful, and it is very difficult to get that follow through and the follow up. And with our current laws that have essentially decriminalized simple possession of these drugs, our success really truly came from getting folks into our jail, getting them into a MOUD program, which we're currently offering in our jail, and getting them to the treatment that they so desperately need. These drugs are extremely powerful, and it takes a lot of effort to overcome their addiction.
Thank you. And Mark, you are next. Do you want me to repeat the question? Mark, do you want me to repeat the question? I think you're muted.
I am. I'm having technical difficulties here. There. Yeah, if you don't mind, just real briefly.
All right. Please share some specific ideas on how the Sheriff's Department can work with the community and treatment organizations to address people who commit low-level drug-related crimes.
Yeah, so we've got several different organizations that we work with here in Clallam County. We've got Peninsula Behavioral Health, Rediscovery, and the Real Team have been instrumental in helping us with people who not only have substance abuse disorder, but other mental health problems as well. We also have the MAC clinic here that opened up in Sequim, and we've got one out here in Port Angeles that has done a great job of helping direct people to the resources they need to get treatment. What we need to do from a law enforcement perspective is to recognize the intentions of a lot of the legislation that has come down, which is removing law enforcement from the equation in a lot of these instances. And what that means is making better utilization of Rediscovery or the other resources that we have in our community to actually get out there and connect with the people in the community. And if that means that we're there for their safety, that's a great thing. But as far as us taking law enforcement action for low-level things such as trespassing or nuisance crimes, we don't need to fill the jail with those low-level crimes unless we're talking about repeat offenders and issues where it becomes a public safety. Once they're in custody, we can also connect them with more push-in support, push-in services from those other resources. And by utilizing those resources that are already in place in the community, it can help reduce the cost to the community as well.
Thank you. And so Mark, you are first on the next question.
Sure.
So there has been public concerns expressed across the country that law enforcement has become too militarized. So what is your response to this concern? You have 90 seconds.
Yeah, and I think that's actually been a concern for several decades now. And, one of the things that happens in this field is we reach out to and we hire a lot of former law or military personnel into this field. Our command structure is something that they're familiar with. They excel with that command structure. And because of that, it brings a lot of military into the field, and that relates to the community. You end up with things like Our uniforms look just like military people with the vests and all the gear, and we look very tactical. And something that has worked in a lot of other places is going with the softer uniform, something that looks more approachable by the community members, and it helps to build that trust in those places. I believe that as far as the military tactics with law enforcement in the state of Washington, our state laws are actually very protective of people's rights and are very protective of the citizens itself and very restrictive on law enforcement. We've seen a lot of those changes with the state legislature over the last few years. And as such, I don't see that in Washington state, the military issues that other states have been a real problem, and definitely not in our community here.
Thank you. And so Brian, same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Norma. Thank you.
Okay, 90 seconds.
So there's been a lot of studies regarding this and regarding the perception of the militarization of police, especially nationally. And really what it comes down to in everything that I've studied and to the folks that I've talked to is really about we have walked away as a nation, not necessarily as a community here in Clallam County, but as a nation from community-oriented policing. And so we were great ambassadors to our communities as a nation, law enforcement as a whole, in the 90s. And we've shifted away from that. There were great programs that were occurring in our communities, COPS programs, where even the federal government was supporting our local jurisdictions and getting more cops into communities and creating these programs. One of the focuses of our administration, one of the focuses of law enforcement here in Clallam County is to continue community-oriented policing. And we regularly conduct block watch and maintain our contact with our citizens in order to ensure that we know what they expect from us and that we can keep our communities safe. And I really believe that it's that disconnect with communities over time and post 9/11 making, detracting from our communities and losing our focus on community-oriented policing over time.
Thank you. Okay, and so now in the rotation system, Brian, you're first for the next question. What is your role in dealing with homelessness, and how will you deal with citizens who believe they have a right to remove possessions of the homeless? You have 90 seconds.
So I'm really passionate about this topic and how we interact and we find solutions for homelessness. I'm on the board of Serenity House, and I joined that board specifically to see how law enforcement in our county could improve on those interactions and to better understand the resources that are available to folks that we are interacting with in the communities and finding ways to navigate them from the streets and up and to shelter care. I tell you what, Sharon Maggard and the Serenity House staff do a really great job with a very, very, very challenging population of folks that are experiencing behavioral health disorder. As far as the personal belongings that do occur, I've had a lot of experiences as chief going out to a lot of homeless encampments, coming across a lot of abandoned property. We take a lot of care in ensuring that this isn't somebody else's belongings, that they have discarded these materials before we ever take any action on trying to clean up these encampments. And what we do find after our visits by our deputies and our chain gang staff is that we find out that these are in fact abandoned encampments, and we begin to do the cleanup.
Thank you. And Mark, you have 90 seconds for the same question. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, it's fine. So
Okay.
as far as our role with homelessness in this community, law enforcement's role with the homelessness issue, first, we have to recognize that homelessness is caused by many different things. It's not just a one problem. or one thing that creates homelessness. You've got behavioral health problems, substance abuse disorders. You've got some people, it's just a lifestyle choice. Other people, it's not choice. It's conditions and, high cost of living and inability to find living wage jobs and affordable housing. So you have to use different approaches to solve that problem because there's not a one size fits all solution. And the Serenity House does a great job, but we have last week, I think Brian said 60 people stay in that Serenity House. It's 120 beds is what they have. So it's not at full occupancy, but we still see people on the street, and that's because of a lot of the mental health disorders and substance abuse disorders. In order to treat that problem, we need to get those people connected with the resources, with the mental health professionals, with the substance abuse counselors, and get them into those treatments. Now, as far as their possessions go, and I'm kind of talking quick here because of the time, as far as removing people's possessions, I would encourage any of our citizens, if you come across a homeless encampment that you believe is abandoned property or property that needs to be removed, reach out to law enforcement, contact law enforcement, and let the law enforcement officers actually do that investigation, determine if it's abandoned property, if it's garbage and just needs to be disposed of, or if it's property that needs to be stored. Please, please do not take the possessions of others and just discard it, because it's just important that they have the possessions that they have, but it's also important that we protect our public lands as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Mark, you're first for the next question. How would you address issues related to juveniles in our county, from drugs to homelessness to truancy to petty crime? Our kids are.
Yeah, this is an issue with that both Brian and I are probably going to be very passionate about. And I think we have kind of a different approach. Both Brian and I, our wives are in education. My wife's a teacher at the middle school here in Port Angeles, his an administrator out in Forks. And so we're very familiar with a lot of the children in our community. We've also raised our children in our community. And seeing the problems that they go through with addiction, with behavioral health, and not having the resources or the parental structure or the support of the community that they need to actually grow and to learn and to become part of a functioning society. It's heartbreaking when you watch that cycle just keep repeating and watch those children going through those same problems. As law enforcement, one of the things that goes by the wayside when money gets tight or when staffing levels get low are those special programs such as school resource officers. And I believe that that's a tool that needs to be implemented in the county. We have Sequim PD has school resource officers, Port Angeles PD has school resource officers, but we have two or an elementary school in Sequim, two in Port Angeles. We've got all of the schools in Joyce and Clallam Bay. All of those schools are unsupported by school resource officers, and getting those law enforcement officers in the schools where they can connect with those kids that are having those problems, where they can encourage them and mentor them and identify them and their needs is what's going to solve that issue.
Thank you. And Brian, the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Norma.
Okay.
It truly, it's all about relationships, and Mark is correct. And it comes down to good old-fashioned community-oriented policing. We have some spectacular deputies, that work out in the field every single day that have created bonds with a whole lot of our youth that are in, emotional, behavioral health type crises, and they create those bonds and they follow up on their contacts with these youth. We have deputies that go and play basketball with our youth, go to football games, create those bonds, create that level of trust. We have a lot of vulnerable young adolescent folks in our community that really need our attention and our support. And it's really creating that trust and creating those bonds that gets a lot of our community and our young adults to adulthood.
Thank you. So Brian, you're first up for the next question. What does the Sheriff's Department need in order to handle citizens that are in need of psychiatric treatment and or drug reactions or overdoses?
We need beds. We need behavioral health crisis beds. We need behavioral health crisis residential centers. We have a lot of great programs that are in place. We have contact every single day with folks that are in behavioral health crisis and trying to link them to the treatment that they so desperately need, getting them down to the hospital. It occurs. We know that these people need intense inpatient psychiatric treatment. They need intense inpatient behavioral health MOUD treatment, but it's not available. There are many times that folks are turned away from our hospital, end up going to jail. And jail is not the alternative, is not the primary location where we want to take these folks, yet they end up in our jail. We have an individual in our jail currently. He's a veteran. He's suffering from PTSD. He is spreading fecal matter all over his cell right now. And it's very difficult. It's heartbreaking to watch because jail is not where this young man needs to be. He needs to have intense inpatient treatment for his behavioral health issues. And it's sad, but as a system, as a state, we do not have the capacity right now to treat individuals like this young man that's currently in our jail. And that's what we need.
Thank you. And Mark, the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, Norma, thank you.
Okay.
So as far as what law enforcement needs to be able to handle that situation or the situation with behavioral health and mental health, first, being mentally ill or having behavioral disorder, that's not a crime. It's the nuisances that they create, the problems that they create in the community that we need to address. We need to address the laws that they violate with aggressive enforcement of state and local laws. And once they're in custody, then they can receive the care and the attention that they need, the resources they need to get better and to get healthy. Outside of the jail, prior to them coming to jail, prior to them committing crimes, what's important is that we utilize the resources in the community again through Peninsula Behavioral Health, Rediscovery, our veterans associations, to reach out to these individuals and to get them the help that they need. There is a lot of truth that we need beds for psychiatric care in the state. And that has been a problem in this state for a long time, and the lack of psychiatric care and facilities in this state is deplorable, that people are forced to live on the streets and live in these conditions because we refuse to provide, as a state, provide the resources that they need to get healthy and well. But from a law enforcement perspective, it's important to recognize the limitations of our authority and to not interfere with things that are not of a criminal nature, but to connect them with the resources that they need to get help.
Thank you. And Mark, you're first for this next question.
Thank you.
Considering the new legislation that makes a simple drug possession a misdemeanor offense, how should the sheriff's department change their response to simple drug possession cases? Okay,
So,
90 seconds.
Yeah, first of all, it changes it to a misdemeanor only after 3 referrals to drug court or drug rehabilitation programs. And those rehabilitation programs, those referrals, first, it's important that we start tracking those and actually get a system in place so that people are actually getting those referrals so that we can start enforcing the state statutes for the misdemeanors. Once they're in custody, of course, they can be connected with push-in services and support for rehabilitation. And, that's what we keep talking about, is the services that the jail provide for rehabilitation for both mental health and for drug addiction, but that's what's really needed. And those resources don't need to be from the jail or a jail employee as far as providing those. Those can be provided from our outside agencies or partnering agencies that can come into the jail and provide those services. And I feel I'm missing part of the question there, Norma.
It was, how does this law change your response to simple drug possessions?
Yeah, so it just changes as far as the other crimes, we need to hold people accountable for the other crimes they commit. So if they're out there committing burglaries or thefts or whatever to feed their addiction, we need to focus on holding them accountable for those crimes instead of trying to hold them accountable for the possession of the drugs. The possession of drugs was the easiest thing in the world in the past to actually enforce. And by enforcing that, unfortunately, law enforcement got away from actually following up on the other thefts and the other crimes that related to addiction. And that's what we need to refocus on now.
Thank you. And Brian, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Nora. Thank you.
Okay, 90 seconds.
So I believe the current law is a object failure in addressing addiction in our community. We did very well as law enforcement in making those simple possession arrests, getting folks into jail and getting them into programs like our drug court, which had a high success rate in incentivizing folks that are using these drugs, that are in possession of these drugs, that are actually committing a lot of the crimes in our community, the theft and the burglaries that we experience, and it's due to their addiction. And we are not effectively addressing that addiction. That is the underlying reason for why we have theft and why we have burglary in our community without being able to incentivize treatment. It is not working for us right now under the current law to go out, have contact with somebody who's in possession of drugs, who are using drugs openly in our community, providing them with a referral letter, taking their drugs and relying on the fact that they're actually needing to go and seek the treatment that we want them to seek. We have to look at revising our law. The current law expires in July. And in this legislative session, we're going to revisit that. And what we need to revisit is a focus and lobby for a focus on incentivizing treatment, which currently does not exist under the new laws.
Thank you. And so now, Brian, you are the first one for the next question. Gun violence is a nationwide problem. How can we reduce this threat?
By holding individuals accountable who choose to violate our laws in reference to the possession of guns, the unlawful possession of guns, and the gun violence that they do inflict in our society. We are not holding people accountable for these violent acts. And we need to do so in order to send not only a message, but to change the behavior of citizens who are choosing to violate our laws. We have robust gun control laws in Washington State, and I'm really proud of them. We have a deputy at the sheriff's office who goes through, conducts background checks, ensures that folks who should not be possessing firearms do not possess firearms. What we need is to enforce the laws that we currently have and have strict penalties for folks who choose to violate our gun laws.
Okay, and Mark, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No. So as far as our gun laws go, I believe Washington State has some of the strongest gun laws in our country. We do a great job with background checks. Every gun purchase in the state of Washington requires a background check, whether that's done through NCIC, local level, or state level for multiple firearm purchases. Enforcing the laws that we have and holding people accountable when they go out and commit crimes with the guns, that's important. A bigger piece is we need to do a better job investigating the theft of firearms and locating stolen firearms, because it's the illegal guns that are on the streets that are most often used to commit violence. And that's what we need to go after. That's what we need to find. And we need to dedicate more resources to that, I believe.
Thank you. Okay, and Mark, you're first for the next question. We're on our last two of community issues.
Okay.
What do you see as the sheriff's office role in therapeutic courts, such as lift court and drug court?
So in mental health court, drug court, all of those courts, the sheriff's office role starts with actually getting people into the court system. It starts by enforcement of the laws and getting them before the magistrates so that they can have that intervention that they need. I believe in those courts. I see those work. I've seen them work, people graduating drug court and returning to a healthy lifestyle. It doesn't work for everybody. You know, incentivized treatment isn't the option for a lot of people, unfortunately, and mandated treatment also doesn't always work. Treatment is something that has to, it's something that has to be wanted by the individual, not just mandated or forced. But having those options with those courts to hold people accountable. The Jamestown Tribal Center, I got to participate in their tribal court on a regular basis, and they were very big on getting their tribal members who were in possession of drugs into rehabilitation programs and to keep them accountable for longer periods of time. I saw one girl coming in on a monthly basis. She came in and reported to that court every month for 2 years, and she stayed clean. Every month she was working a job and doing great. As soon as that time period got expanded out to where she was coming back every 3 to 6 months, that's when she was able to relapse. So having that longer time period for that accountability, I think, is what's important for that success.
Thank you. And Brian, the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Norma.
Okay.
So drug court admissions are way down. And so we're not seeing that incentivized treatment that we traditionally have seen in our drug court system. Our role as law enforcement and particularly as sheriff's deputies, as we have members on both teams, on both the drug court team and on the mental health court team. And to maximize that role, we need communication, and that communication happens as we are out as deputies out in the community and we see our drug court participants, whether they're behaving, they're not behaving, we're trying to support them in their recovery efforts. It's that communication piece. We know what is occurring in our community. We have to be at the table with both the drug court team and the mental health court team to do that community outreach, ensure that folks are sticking to the plan that they have been essentially court ordered to do, and ensuring that they have that continued follow-up. We do a good job with that. We have some very dedicated deputies that support those programs. But what we are seeing is our inability to get folks, especially into the drug court program, the therapeutic court, the mental health court. It's still being built. I think it's going to be a very, very positive program, but it's going to have to take law enforcement partnering with the court in order to ensure that it's successful.
Thank you. And the final community issues question, Brian, you're first. How do you plan to address the continued problem of theft and security in local businesses?
It's really through our community policing programs and our block watch, and communicating with our businesses as to how they can target harden their businesses and work with them on ensuring that we are doing the proper follow-up, that we are providing responsive law enforcement services that meet their needs and ensure that we're doing good investigations on the crimes that we're investigating. I'm extremely proud to say that the sheriff's office has double the clearance rate. And what I mean by clearance rate is we saw double the crimes of other Washington state agencies on average. And we know that partnership and relying on our citizens as being, our additional eyes and ears out in the community contributes to our success. The policing environment in rural environments, like the sheriff's office, is much different than what cities face. And so it's oftentimes we don't have nearly the business core as the cities do. That helps us in some ways be highly successful when it comes to addressing the needs of our Clallam County unincorporated businesses, but it really starts with that partnership and that communication existing between our sheriff's deputies and our Clallam County businesses.
And Mark, the same question. Would you like it repeated?
How do I plan to address the theft and security in local businesses or support the businesses in those matters? So I think first and foremost, and this comes back to one of my platform issues that I spoke about, having a jail that's actually open and functioning, and that comes back to the staffing. The issue that I have seen on patrol here in Clallam County repeatedly is the officers go out and they make an arrest for theft or damage to a business. But property crimes over the last 10 years that I've worked in this county, if the jail capacity is starting to get full, property crimes are not held in the Clallam County Jail. They refuse the booking. And it's a slap in the face to those business owners and to our small business owners who are victimized repeatedly over and over and over again, to have that individual who comes into their store and steals from them, and then to just be released from police custody with not even a citation anymore. Now it's just a referral up to the prosecutor's office. There has to be accountability for the crimes people commit in our community. And until there's that accountability piece, the crimes are going to continue to escalate and continue to happen, and our business owners are going to continue to be victimized. And so that's actually one of my platform pieces, is to make sure that jail is actually open and functioning and able to handle those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next set of questions we sort of have generically labeled as management of the office issues.
Sure.
So Mark, you're the first one to respond to this question. What do you see as the biggest challenge confronting the sheriff's office, and what specific actions do you plan to overcome that challenge?
Yeah. So again, the biggest obstacle the sheriff's office has is its staffing, and its staffing is going to continue to be a problem until we address the work conditions. And the work conditions are that the deputies are overworked. They talk about it being a national crisis. It's not a national, or it is a national crisis, but it's not a local crisis. Our local neighboring agencies have been able to maintain their staffing over the last decade. The issue here at the Clallam County Sheriff's Office is not our inability to hire, it's our inability to retain people. So in order to fix that, we need to address the working conditions, and we need to address the morale. And those issues are going to change by changing the administrative priorities, how we're working with our employees, and making sure that they know that they are cared for and that they are valued for the work that they do. That's got to be the most demoralizing thing when an employee really puts himself out there and goes all out on something, and it just goes unnoticed. You've got to be, as a manager, you've got to be in the field and with the officers and seeing what they're actually doing, observing the conditions that they're working in order to address that. And so that's my goal as the sheriff, will be to make sure that the administration is not just up here at 30,000 feet, but that they're also down here on the street level with the employees and leading by example in the field. You've got to spend that time in the field with them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, the same question. Would you like it repeated?
No, thank you, Norma. To suggest that the current administration does not care about their deputies or about the staffing and recruiting needs is preposterous, and it is extremely sad. Yes, we have a recruiting and retention issue at the sheriff's office. We've had that for some time. It does mirror what local agencies experience. Mark works for the Port Townsend Police Department. I know that they're experiencing some very challenging recruiting and retention crises there. I mean, this is not a abnormal situation that we're experiencing here in Clallam County. And yes, it's a national problem. Yes, it's a state problem, but we have taken aggressive efforts at tackling recruiting and retention, including a $600,000 recruiting and retention plan that is already paying off tremendously. I'm proud to say tomorrow that we are going to offer a conditional offer of employment to a young man that's going to be our next Clallam County Sheriff's Deputy, and that fills all. We have no more open positions on the road after that. We have currently seen an influx of applications into our jail to backfill the needs of our jail staff. We're down 9 positions, but after meeting with the Association of Washington Counties just last week, they are proud that we maintained the staffing in our jail that we have. The administration cares, the administration is listening, and we're doing a darn good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, you're first for the next question. It's a budget question. So if the Sheriff's Department budget was suddenly allocated more funds or was reduced funding, in both those situations, which areas would be affected? What would be affected if you had more money, and what would be affected if you had less money?
If we had less money, it would be our criminal investigations. And so we need to backfill. We need to have our primary responsibility is patrol and meeting the needs of our citizenry out in the field. And so that's our focus. That's where our primary response needs to be. Anytime you become short-staffed, that's where your focus becomes. You need a certain amount of deputies to operate the jail, and you cannot cut positions there. Where you begin to cut is those investigatory positions. Now, if we have more funding and we come up with certainly more deputies in the field, that's where I'd be allocating those dollars. But then to be able to expand our field response when it comes to mental health co-response out in the field, that would give us a far more robust response to dealing with our population that is in behavioral health crisis, as well as partnering with code enforcement and focusing on those derelict nuisance properties that breed crime in our county. With additional staffing, that's where our focus would be.
Thank you. And Mark, the same question. Would you like it repeated?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So first off, if a budget reduction were to occur, the first place that I would start trimming the fat, so to speak, would be from administration. We've got more administrators and supervisors. In fact, we're almost at a 1-to-1 level with administrators and supervisors to deputies on patrol. So I believe that we have some room that we could move people around. Every one of them do an important job right now, but we're talking if there's a fire or a crisis and we have to make shifts, that would be the first place that I would go to is using or cutting from administration and getting administrators out in the field to help fill some of that backload or that caseload. If there were more funding available, one of the things that I could see benefiting our community would be to build our investigations unit and actually have more investigators to actually handle cases such as property crimes. Having those trained investigators to handle those and to remove that load from the frontline officers would benefit the community by having more trained investigators handling those cases and working on those cases, but it also benefits the community by freeing up those officers to actually be able to respond to calls much quicker because they're not just buried with a bunch of investigations.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question, Mark, you're the first one to answer. How do you envision your collaborative efforts with interagency law enforcement such as working with federal, tribal, and municipal departments?
Yeah, so my last assignment with the Clallam County Sheriff's Office was at the Jamestown tribe. I was the tribal liaison for the Clallam County Sheriff's Office in the Jamestown tribe. I went through the BIA school for being a special deputy for on Indian lands. The cooperation that we have in this community, working with and collaborating with our other local law enforcement agencies, such as sharing an office with the city of Sequim and having our officers being able to communicate and collaborate on a regular basis. Being in the field and working with the Port Angeles PD as much as we are. I believe there's room to develop our relationship and expand our relationship with the Elwha tribe. One of the things that was brought to me is getting that cross jurisdiction between the two agencies, getting that done. It's been on the desks for some time. So working with those agencies, I feel we do a great job, and we just need to continue doing that in the future and build that collaboration more.
Thank you. And Brian, the same question. Would you like it repeated?
No, thank you, Norma. Mark's referring to a cross-deputization agreement with the Elwha, which we've had for years, and it's been signed and it's in practice. It doesn't sit on any desk. It actually does exist, and Chief White and I are quite proud of that agreement. Meetings with the Makah tribe that I recently had, they're interested in modeling an agreement just like we do have with Elwha and that we do have with Jamestown. I've predicated my career on partnerships with our local law enforcement agencies. I'm the commander of the Olympic Peninsula Narcotics Enforcement Team. The success of that unit comes from the partnerships that we've leveraged at the Sheriff's Office with other local agencies and our federal partners. We have our federal partners here in Clallam County weekly talking about some of the cases that we're working, and we're very successful at high-level prosecutions at the federal level and holding the most serious offenders that are committing crimes in our county accountable. I would encourage the voting public to ask the leadership of our police agencies in this county who they support and why they support the candidate, our local law enforcement, and Brian King for sheriff.
Okay, and Brian, you're the first for the next question. In your opinion, what does the Sheriff's Office do very well, and what areas need improvement?
We are very skilled, very good investigators. But like I said earlier, we solve double the rate of crimes as the average law enforcement agency in Washington State does. We do so because we have a very sophisticated case management system, and we've invested in high-end technology softwares that really truly aid us in our investigative strategy. And it too comes back to the work that we do with our federal partners in utilizing resources to hold people accountable for some of the most serious of crimes in our vulnerable populations in Clallam County. We do that really, really well. Where I think that we can really improve as an agency is in not just how we structure our community policing programs. And so we've done a really good job of outreach, and the outreach comes from a lot of our command staff employees. But really what we need to do improve upon within our communities is getting the deputies that are living in their neighborhoods and in their communities engaged with the citizenry. And I have a vision, and I have an idea of really actually having our deputies attending our block watch programs, the ones that live in those communities and the ones that can actually truly engage with their neighbors.
Okay. And Mark, the same question?
Yeah, one thing that, no, it's good. One thing the Sheriff's Office really has gotten right, and I mean this, you know, is very dear to me, is the hiring of choosing the candidates that come to work for the Sheriff's Office. you have some of the most dedicated law enforcement officers in this community. They care about the community and they care about service to this community. And that's one thing that I would never change within this agency or this organization is the care put into the selection of those officers. They've done a great job at picking the people that are going to represent the agency and protect our community. The one area where I feel we need to make the biggest impact or could make the biggest impact in our community is also to do more community-oriented policing and do more effort there. But again, as staffing levels have decreased, as call volumes have increased, the first things cut are those special programs, school resource officers, traffic enforcement officers, liaisons for the community. We need to get back to a level with our staff so that we can have those deputies in those places so that they can go to those block watch meetings. That would be fantastic. But right now, when you have 2 officers on the street patrolling from Lake Crescent to Diamond Point, it's just not feasible.
Thank you. Okay, and Mark, you're the first one for the next question. What skills, traits, characteristics, and abilities would you look for in people that you would promote to supervisory positions?
I would look for people who are accepting and able to adapt to change, because this is a very changing environment as far as the legalities and the laws that we enforce. And what we see a lot in this field is you see people who become rigid on how we've always done things. And when laws change, such as the decriminalization of drugs, we're slow to adapt to those changes. And we still continue on with the enforcement of drugs and try to do that enforcement of drugs when there are other crimes that we can be focusing on and investigating that will have the same effect, holding people accountable for the burglaries, for the thefts, for the other crimes that they commit. May not be as flashy or as fast as prosecuting for simple possession of drugs, but it has the lasting impact, and that's what the community needs, is that impact into the crime. So yeah, thank you, Norma.
Okay, and Brian, the same question. Would you like it repeated?
No, thank you, Norman.
Okay.
Now, some of the traits I look for is leadership, work ethic, commitment, and job skill, and what that and their commitment to community. And so we recently had an assessment center for sergeant, and we look at all those characteristics, characteristics for an investment in the future of the Clallam County Sheriff's Office and developing emerging leaders. I'm not going to be here forever. Our current sheriff, he's retiring. Obviously, he's not going to be here forever. Under Sheriff Cameron, we have several sergeants that are not going to be here forever. You always need to be developing your leadership, your next leaders, and we take great pride in doing that. And what that comes from is looking for individuals that have an investment in the organization, a long-term investment in the organization, and have the commitment to continue to serve this community at high levels. Skill and dedication to this organization is critical for the future of a healthy organization. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian. We're almost near the end. You're the first person for the next question. So there's a lot of throughput in all of these answers, issues surrounding staffing. So I'd like to just give you one more round and a chance to discuss how you plan to address the staffing issues at the department. And so Brian, you're first.
We've done a lot as an organization to address staffing. We've sought consultants, and those consultants have told us, okay, billboards, we've invested in billboards, roadside reader boards, We've invested in a recruiting video. We have a recruiting video, and it's here at our local a movie theater. But really what we're seeing, the critical investment that we have just made and the critical investment that I think is going to work is our recruiting and retention plan, because we are already reaping the benefits of that plan. Our corrections division is interviewing 2 laterals on Monday. We have several entry-level officers. We have no openings now on the patrol side of our operation. They just don't exist. We have consistently addressed the needs of our organization. We've had a recruiting and retention crisis. This has existed in law enforcement. It's existed in our nursing in this county. It exists in our schools. All of these organizations in our county are aggressively fighting this crisis, and we're seeing the tides turn. It's a non-issue for our organization moving forward. It's a challenge, and we're overcoming that challenge.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, the same question.
Sure. And again, as far as the retention and recruiting goes, it's been an issue in this department for about the last 7 years. And we have gone from bad to worse with our staffing level. And it's fantastic that they just filled that last position. It'll be a year before that officer gets out onto the streets if it's a new hire. You've got the academy time, the field training. Right now, we have 4 deputies in the last couple months that have tested for or applied for other agencies off of patrol. I was informed by one of our corrections officers the other day. They've got 5 people planning on leaving the jail in the next 6 months. We've got this retention bonus that they put out of $10,000 per officer. It was rejected by just about every officer. And the reason it was rejected is because the deputies do not want to continue staying in the conditions that they're in. They're stuck in these conditions, and they're not willing to sign a 3-year commitment because they don't have faith that the conditions are going to improve over the next few years. In order to fix the problems with our retention in this county is within this agency, we have to start addressing the problems of the work conditions. And until that's done, we're going to continue again to bleed officers to our neighboring agencies. I see the retention program and the recruitment money that they're throwing out. They're $600,000 taxpayer dollars to fix an issue that was created by lack of interest in commitment to recruiting over the last 7 years.
Okay. Thank you. And the final question is, before we move into your summary statements, is to make sure that the audience clearly understands. Please tell us again, what is your primary goal for your first year in office, and what specific actions will you plan to take to reach that goal? And so Mark, you're up for this question.
Yeah, primary goal is to actually get the agency up to staff. And in order to reach that goal, we have to, once again, retain the officers that we have working for us. They have to know that we're actually willing to make that commitment to change, not just do this for political, not put up billboards and stuff for political gain. What that means is we have to get out into the community and actually recruit from within our community. Having laterals come over from other agencies to our area right now, where you have the average price of a home is $400,000, and there's only a handful of homes that are suitable on the market. It's not conducive to long-term employment. We need to recruit from the resources that we have right here in our community. And there's a difference, and there seems to be this misunderstanding that putting up billboards and light up signs in people's yards for applications is recruitment. That's not recruitment. That's just driving applications. And applications have a huge fail rate, whether it's in the background process, they just don't have the experience, they've got legal issues, or they just fill out the application because they have to in order to apply for unemployment. Applications are not recruiting. You have to actually go out and talk to people and build interest in the jobs that you have and get people interested in changing their career path. And that's something that I did in management years ago, and that's what I bring to the table today, and that's what I will be able to do in my first year, is get this agency back to staff.
Okay, and Brian, the same opportunity to again discuss your primary goals for the first year in office and some specific actions you would use to get to your goal.
Yeah, I think we're accomplishing our recruiting and retention goals. I mean, we are there with what we have done. And yeah, Mark is right. You know, you need to be out in the community. You need to be recruiting community-minded deputies. We're doing that, and we're being highly successful in doing that. And we are going to overcome what crisis we did have based on the leadership that's already in place in this organization. I don't know who Mark is talking to about who is going to leave. I have deputies coming to me daily going like, hey, chief, I heard that so-and-so saying that I'm going to leave our organization. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be involved in the politics of this race. And I respect that. I understand that. It's too bad that this is occurring and that it's actually causing concern around our organization because of this political race, and I'm extremely saddened by that. I don't want to make our staff affected at all by what's occurring in a race for sheriff of Clallam County, and it's disheartening and sad. My focus, my primary goal, my first year as sheriff is building a seismically tolerant emergency operations center to meet the needs of Clallam County and its citizens in natural disaster recovery. It is so necessary to do. We're partnering with local agencies, and I think we're going to be highly successful in doing that.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes our questions about management. And now we'll move on to the summary stage. And at this point, you'll have 2 minutes each, and we're going to reverse the order that we had in the beginning. So Mark, you will be first, and you'll have 2 minutes to tell us whatever you want to tell us. You're muted.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
This newfangled technology.
Yeah, okay.
So I moved my family here 11 years ago to come work for the Clallam County Sheriff's Office. I also was a lateral entry. I came from the Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office back in Kansas. And the reason we moved our family here at that time was, again, we wanted our children to grow up in a small town environment where we know that they were safe walking to school, playing in the parks. We didn't have to worry about their safety. And over the last 10 years, we've just watched as that's eroded away. And I can't continue to sit by and to just watch that continue without addressing those issues. And the issues that we're facing is not enough officers on the street, a jail refusing bookings, and not having the technology needed to do our jobs effectively and efficiently. And I've worked in this agency both in the corrections division and the patrol division. And I've worked in this agency on the line level. And so I see what's going on a daily basis, and I see those issues and that those issues need to be addressed. Brian and I have different priorities. It's just that simple. There's no animosity between myself and Brian, at least not for my part. I respect Brian, and he will be in my administration when I'm elected, if I'm elected next year. My priorities, though, are to the community and getting officers back onto the street and having that jail open and bringing up our technology up to speed, having those body cameras for the officers. It is so crucial for building public trust, and it's crucial for protecting the officers. And that's, I ask for your vote because I see the same thing that I believe most of our community sees, and that is crime is a problem in our community. It is not down, it has been up and will continue to be up if we continue doing the same thing. And we just need to do something different. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Brian, 2 minutes for your summary statement.
I've been a law enforcement officer for 27 years in Clallam County, a member of the Sheriff's Office Command Staff for 7 years, and a member of the Sheriff's Office Supervision Team for 15 years. As such, I'm a part of a management team that has brought the Sheriff's Office where we are today. We are the one of the most efficient, well-run organization in all of Washington State. There are 260 law enforcement agencies in Washington State. Only 24% of them are accredited. Only 2 are accredited in both the jail and operations in all of Washington State. We take great pride in our professionalism, our efficiency, and the work that we do in our community every day. In unincorporated Clallam County, we have 1/3 of the average crime rate in all of Washington State. We believe that it's because of our responsive professional law enforcement services that we provide our citizens, as well as the partnerships that we have created with our citizenry. I am on the phone every single day with folks in our community. Yeah, crime is always going to be an issue. It's always going to be a challenge, but as a progressive, service-oriented law enforcement agency, we will overcome all these challenges. No more than overcoming the challenges that we are currently doing with our retention efforts here at the sheriff's office and in our recruiting efforts. We're overcoming these challenges. We're always going to have challenges. We continue, and Marc continues to say that the jail needs to be opened. So the jail is wide open. We are up to our historic levels of incarceration. Over 8 years, I've looked at the average of where we were today versus where we were yesterday. We have 115 individuals in jail. COVID caused us some problems. We needed to be responsible in how we managed our jail during the COVID pandemic. We did a very, very good job of doing so. And I'm proud to say that we got through it. And I ask for the citizens' vote.
Thank you. So that is concludes the participation of the candidates and their questions and answers. And we want to thank both of you for being candid and helping the community understand some of our community issues and how it relates to the sheriff's office. And remind the public that your ballots will be mailed out October 21st. They must be returned by November 8th. And you can mail them in or drop them off at a box. And if your ballot has not been received by about October 26th, then call the auditor's office. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the audience who cared enough about elections to tune in tonight. And also to thanks the North Olympic Library System that Megan stepped in and did a great job. And Silas, who's with the Peninsula Area Public Access on Channel 21, will be covering this and playing. And also this has been recorded and it will be available on YouTube in a few days. So you need to go to the League's Women Voters Clallam County website for the link for the YouTube. And I think that's about it. And we're going to now go back and have those informational messages. So in case you missed them in the beginning, to help you figure out. And if you want to get some more information on these candidates, you can go to the voters pamphlet. So thank you all for showing up. It's very special thanks for our candidates. It's a lot of work to run for office. As we said earlier on, it's probably easier to do the job than to run for it. So we thank both of you for your dedication and for your courtesy to each other. It's really was a good evening. So thank you all, and I will stand adjourned, but if you want to stay tuned for a couple minutes, you can see the rest of the
Thank you, Norma.